President Cyril Ramaphosa has called for a national day of prayer on the eve of the 21-day national lockdown, which starts at midnight. He's invited South Africans to observe 2 minutes of prayer, reflection or silent meditation between 6 and 6:30 this evening. The presidential spokesperson, Khusela Diko, spoke to the SABC News on this matter.
We are on the eve of the national lockdown. It is unprecedented in the history of the country, where we literally expect everybody to stay home. And this unprecedented decision is taken because it is honestly the only way to stop the virus, as the president has said. Now, the president has appreciated that during this period, a lot of people will be anxious, they'll be fearful, they'll be uncertain. And in the discussions that he had held with religious leaders on Thursday last week, it came to be that it's important that we must show solidarity to one another. We must be able to dig into whatever faith that you believe in, whether you're religious, you're not religious, but we must create an opportunity where the entire nation can stand in unison, in solidarity and in solitude to reflect not only on the moment that we are at now, but also about the number of people across the world who had lost their lives, the various countries on our continent and across the world that are continuing to battle with disease, but also those who have lost their loved ones. In our country, we have more than 700 people who are infected, and by necessary implication, a lot more who are affected living with those particular compatriots. So it's to ask everyone to take 2 minutes of your time between 6 o'clock and 6:30 tomorrow. That will be 6 hours before the national lockdown comes into effect, and really just reflect and I think stand in unity and in solidarity as a country to defeat this pandemic.
I see even from the statement that the presidency issued earlier on, the president saying that the nation's thoughts should also be particularly with those who are in hospital, quarantine or even self-isolation.
We must keep them in our prayers and thoughts. We are wishing those who are infected a speedy recovery. We are also, I think, sending a lot of gratitude and appreciation to our health workers. While the president is calling on all of us to stay home, those people will not be at their home. They'll be at work, ensuring that they stay there in order to keep us safe. We must also remember our emergency and our security personnel, the police, the soldiers, the traffic officers who continue to ensure that we are protected. But we must also, Algin, and really also thank the media. I think the president in his statement, he also expressed gratitude for the role that the media has played to send out these messages and ensure that the nation is kept informed and educated about what's happening. So it's a difficult time. It's one of the greatest challenges that we have faced as a nation. And I think the faith leaders, in speaking to the president, wanted to put that across. Now, you'll remember that the president had urged faith communities in particular not to gather in churches. And while that particular prohibition is still there, we're calling on people wherever they are, in their homes, where they sit as a family. But when you know that 58 million other South Africans are really with you in that moment. We've also called that for young people and a lot of those who are active on social media, that let's demonstrate that solidarity. You never know who may be on their own during this 21-day national shutdown. And I think it's the compassion and the unity that as South Africans that we always strive for in times of great difficulty, and this is one of them.
Yeah, and actually in that statement as well, the presidency calling on you South Africans to, when you are on social media, to tweet the flag of the country using the hashtag Pray for South Africa. So that hashtag is hashtag Pray for South Africa as you tweet and send out those tweets with the South African flag. But Khusela, as we conclude this conversation, it's certainly not a virus that only affects South Africa, but it affects the entire globe and the continent as well. And the president, of course, being the chairperson of the African Union, having cancelled some meetings that he were supposed to have attended or that have been scheduled as well. What's the sense that you're getting from the presidency side, at least, on how coordination is happening at a continental level around trying to curb the spread of this virus?
Well, indeed, Eldon, you're correct. The coronavirus is a global emergency, and it doesn't affect one country, one continent, but we do know that as Africa, we are particularly vulnerable. While we have not recorded as high numbers as in many parts of the world, I think the statistics are only showing that it's a matter of time before it hits us even harder on the continent. Now, what the president is doing in his capacity as chairperson of the African Union is that he will be holding a virtual meeting with members of the African Union Bureau, which is obviously the government structure that supports him in his work as chairperson of the African Union. And I think there, to thresh out a continental response, there are a number of areas that he has been in contact with the AU Commission on to look at in terms of, firstly, how do we ensure that Africa is capacitated, it's well-resourced in order to fight this pandemic, but also to ensure that the most vulnerable, the many of which are found on our continent, are then protected and supported. So that is a discussion that will happen tomorrow. Thereafter, he will participate in another virtual meeting of leaders of the G20 that South Africa is part of. And again, in true South African tradition, he'll be putting forward the case for Africa in that meeting, that as the world, the globe battles this particular pandemic, it's important that we always keep an eye to looking at how Africa, with the challenges that this continent faces, where already we have weakened economies, where already we carry, the burden of the poorest of the poor in the world, and how the rest of the world, especially your G20 countries, which are your most industrialized in the world, are able to support Africa as we continue to battle the coronavirus.
Long distance